Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Boone, North Carolina, Raymond Christian.
Well, greetings from Boone, where the black population is less than 1%. So my presence here has probably shifted the whole balance of power in the county completely. In 1980, Jimmy Carter was president, and the Iranians were still holding Americans hostage in Tehran, and my favorite show, Good Times, was canceled. And I was a 19-year-old soldier stationed in South Korea, far away from the warm embrace of my mama and my stepdaddy, and the taste of neck bones and beans, and the smell of kerosene, and the responsibility to have to read for them because they were both illiterate. I couldn't wait to leave home. I arrived in country with great anticipation. I couldn't wait to be a part of my new family. The 1st Battalion, 38th Infantry, 2nd Infantry Division, Camp Hovey, Korea. We were part of a continuous presence of U.S. forces in Korea since 1951 and the start of the Korean War. See, there was no formal end to the war, so we were still conducting combat patrols and manning observation posts on the demilitarized zone. We were part of what historians call the Forgotten War, shortly after World War II, and kind of overshadowed by the legacy of Vietnam. On the demilitarized zones, the North Koreans were always trying to be provocative. They would make these propaganda speeches on these loudspeakers across the demilitarized zone every day to try to break down our sense of loyalty and unity. They would make statements like this. They would yell out, "White GIs, Negroes are home killing and raping your women. Negro GIs, kill your evil white officers," which was an interesting idea, but we decided not to do that at all. So our clear and stated enemy was the North Korean army. But when we were not on the demilitarized zone, we lived in a small compound where it was 100 guys, each living in a tin hut. In the summertime, it would be broiling hot, and we would fight each other for the one fan that we had between us. In the wintertime, it would be so cold that we would put cups of water on the floor and wake up in the morning and ask each other, "How cold is it?" Somebody would say, "It's a half a cup cold this morning." We were guys from all over the place. We had guys that were white, that were black, that were Hispanic. We were athletes, we were bodybuilders, we were young, we were family men, we were single, we had guys that were atheists, and we had guys that were religious. We were bonded together. We lived in such close proximity. 100 guys, 8 shower heads. It was impossible not to be naked and rub up against somebody. And you didn't necessarily have to be stimulated, but but we were bonded together that way. We listened to each other's problems. We understood each other's concerns. We knew each other's sense of weaknesses. We knew each other's strength. We knew who to trust. We knew who not to trust. In fact, I had one particular friend. He was from Mississippi, and he was obsessed with all things to do with food. And no matter what you said, being from Mississippi, his situation was always worse. For example, you know this guy? For example, if you had a guy who came from an impoverished background, let's say he was from New York, and he said, "We were so poor, we used to have to eat oatmeal every other day." You get a guy from Detroit, and he might say, "Well, we were so poor, we had to eat oatmeal every day." My boy from Mississippi would hear something like that and say, "Y'all got to eat oatmeal every day?" Now, despite the fact that we were bonded together, we were trained in the art of killing, we knew what each other could do, and we understood loyalty, we still had one problem. We had an enemy we had never conceived of before. We had an enemy that we didn't think about that had the potential to break up our bonds. And that enemy was venereal disease. Venereal disease combined with racial conflict and the distorted and perverted images that were created in the village. See, when I first got into the country, the commander said to me and others, "Men, a soldier with venereal disease causes us problems. We have to take that soldier out of action. We have to treat him. We have to confine him. He could die, he could be injured. This could cause not only physical problems, but psychological problems as well. A distracted soldier is not an effective soldier at all." Well, my friend, who I had met, my boy from Mississippi, the first time we had an opportunity to go on pass, he said to me, "I'll be the one to take you down to the village. But when we get to the gate, there's a couple of things you need to know. The MPs are going to ask you to take 2 condoms out this large box, and you have to look at the tote board." Tote board, I'd never heard of that before. So we got to the gate, and I saw this huge tote board, and it says at the top of it, "Top 10 for VD." Number 1, name never changes, was Street Girls. Number 2 to number 10 always rotated to depend on how popular the club was or which had the most VD. When you go into the village, is that strange to you? To further help us along to try to cut down on the risk of VD, they instituted a new kind of program, and the clubs kind of distorted this at the same time. You see, all the girls who worked in the club, and every club had its contingent of prostitutes, or business women, or josans as they were called. Each one of these clubs, the girls wore uniforms. They were like cheerleading outfits. With one difference, each one of the uniforms had a patch on it with a number. And the reason for this was because stupid GIs believed that all Koreans looked the same. And if they were asked the question, "Can you identify your last sexual contact?" most of them couldn't. But using this system, they could say, "Well, it was number 23 from the New Guy Club." Guys who had worked together, trained together, suffered together, and lived together couldn't party together in the village. Because what the Koreans had done in the clubs is they had divided American culture based on race and some weird perceptions of American culture. For example, there was a club called the Cowboy Club. And in this club, all the prostitutes wore cowboy hats. And inside the club, there were Confederate flags all along the walls. If you were a black soldier and you even came close to the door, what you were likely to hear was a Korean girl say, "Nigga no can come in." Now, there were a lot of black clubs. One in particular was called the Motown Club. Now, of all the black clubs, this one probably had the greatest, most diverse types of people going into it at one time in terms of black soldiers. But the one club that really sticks in my mind is a club called JJ's. Now, in JJ's was this huge mural of Jimmy Walker. The girls in the club all picked their hair like they could have afros. Oddly enough, I kept hearing this funny word when I went inside. All the girls kept saying, "Ki danomaishi, ki danomaishi." Say, what does that mean? Oh, they're saying Kid Dynamite. All the girls were named Telma or Flordishi. I remember asking one girl or saying to one girl, "Hey, you don't look like Florida." And she said, "I goo, son of mo bitchy, you don't looking like a JJ." Well, that could be a compliment or an insult. I'm not really sure one way or the other. But despite this fantasy world, life in the village could become all too real. I remember one night seeing 4 guys from the unit get involved in a hell of a fist fight. And I looked at my friend, I said, "Hey man, should we get involved?" And he said, "Oh no. Those guys either played the wrong music or they talked to the wrong whore. That's how life works in the village, man. We don't get involved." Well, I had been in country for almost a year now, being judgmental. I'd never bothered with any of the prostitutes. I was talking mess about the guys who did. But my hormones started working on me too. Despite the fact that I probably at this point had attended at least 100 anti-VD courses, classes, seminars, booklets, whatever you want to call them. I had seen them all, but there's some things they didn't tell me. One of them is I had never actually used a condom before. Nobody told me you couldn't just bite the wrapper open, which I did. And I split it down the middle, but thinking quickly, I tied it in a little knot up at the top. And it wasn't quite effective. So it bothered me, and I worried about it. But every Monday, the Army had what they call VD, sick call, just for guys who thought they might have VD. So I thought maybe I'd go over and just kind of like ask some questions, maybe get a little checked out. But when I got there, I was in a line with about 100 guys. I started raising my hand up, going, excuse me, Sergeant, where is the line for people who just have questions? He go, you're in the only damn line there is. Stay right there. As the line started to move forward, and you remember I said earlier that VD was like another enemy. And in this particular case, I was wounded by the enemy. And they had me, because here I am in this line. And the first station in front of us, there's this curtain. And we could all hear this sound coming from behind the curtain. It was the sound of guys grunting, squealing, crying, going, ow, ooh, Well, that made everybody in the line nervous because fear is contagious. People started turning around, looking at each other, wondering what's going on, can they do this, what's up? Well, the guys were nervous for two reasons. Either one, they had been pissing hot razor blades for a week and they needed to be treated, or two, they were afraid of what was called the Swab Test. You know about that. The Swab Test is they would take this 12-inch wire, very thin wire, with a cotton swab on the tip and quickly insert it into your urethra and pull it out. Now, the wire is 12 inches long. It probably only had to penetrate a half an inch, or an eighth of an inch, or a 16th of an inch because nobody was erect. You probably only had a turtle head of a penis by the time you got up there in the front of that line. You move to the next station in the line after you get swabbed. And at the next station, there's a table. And the table is full of needles, lots of needles. And you're required to pick up two and continue in the line. And these needles are big. I mean, they're as big around as a shotgun shell or a sausage or a blunt, whatever your point of reference is, but they're big. So you walk to the medic and he doesn't even look at you. He just simply puts his hand out and he says, needles. You give them to him, you bend over the table, and he injects you quickly with this thick, viscous fluid that creates two large lumps on your buttocks. After that, we're all put together in a little group and we're informed. If you do not clear in 7 days, you will not leave country. You are never going to go home. We will never allow a soldier to leave here and return to the United States with venereal disease. Everybody has to be checked out. Well, 7 days had passed and I didn't hear anything. And normally the clearance reports came out on a piece of paper. But I did get a message. You need to report to the aid station. Oh, God. I get to the aid station and I said, you asked for me? And they said, yeah. And they went through the paperwork and he looked up at me and I'm nervous because I want to go home. And they say, you are cleared. You're going home. I couldn't wait to get back home. I couldn't wait to eat a bowl of neck bones and beans. I couldn't wait to smell kerosene. I couldn't wait to read for my mama and daddy. I couldn't wait to be home. I couldn't wait for family.
Raymond Christian, family, clan.